women were really clear. They wanted, their preference was 24 or 48-hour test drives, unaccompanied.
Right, take it away.
The majority of men said an hour is fine.
Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. Hello and welcome to Women in the Driving Seat, the podcast that shines a spotlight on wonderful women in the automotive industry. This week, we're going to be exploring the world of car marketing and customer relations. I'm joined in the studio by Catherine Faiers, COO of Auto Trader, and Julia Greenhough, Marketing Director of TrustFord. Thank you both very much for coming in today. Before we get going, we look at our guest bios. Catherine. Catherine is COO of Auto Trader and a member of the PLC board, non-executive director at Allegro, mentor and early stage investor. She's been at Auto Trader for 7 years and before that worked in senior roles at consumer technology businesses, delivering strategy, transformations and change. Her career has been an adventure, taking her in all sorts of different directions, rather than a ladder or career path. She's a 44-year-old mum and stepmum, living in East London, juggling family, work and travel, with the occasional football match squeezed in. Julia has been Marketing Director at TrustFord, the largest Ford dealer group in the UK, for 11 years. She is also executive sponsor for TrustFord's Women's Network Group. Previously, she worked for high street brands including Argos, BHS, I remember those days, and Virgin. Married with a grown-up son, an even more grown-up stepdaughter, 3 small step-grandkids and a dog called Ralph, Julia chooses to relax by singing in a 6-piece folk band. Whoa, we will have to circle back to that. Ask for a chord or two. Anyway, welcome both. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
We're going to delve in, as we always do, with the same question to both of you, which is, what's been going on in your week? What plates have you been spinning? What balls have you been dropping? Julia.
Well, it is the first week of March.
Yes, that's what everyone keeps saying today.
Breathe. Full on. Got a brilliant team, so we've been planning for ages in advance, but then there's always that last-minute enhancement changes from the manufacturer to get going, but fingers crossed, we're there. So that's work. Meantime, at home, I'm quite lucky now. I'm not at that stage. A lot of my team with small children, but it doesn't stop things going on because we've got my son is in the process, along with his girlfriend, of buying a new house, so that brings different stresses while we go on that bumpy ride. And I have an enormous box in the middle of our dining room, which apparently is a cuddle chair that's due for this house, which we haven't actually got yet, but hopefully that will move out quite soon along with them.
So they're all going to move into you before they then
They've been living here. They've been living back for a while. So not long to go now. I think we're very close to crossing the line, but exciting.
It's
a big step.
Parenthood, they always say, don't they? Like the problems don't lessen, they just change.
Yes, completely. It doesn't.
And the
stop.
joys, obviously. Speaking of parenthood and combining everything, Catherine, what's been going on in your week?
My day started with pancakes.
Oh, yes,
of course, Tuesday.
Yeah.
So I was up early making pancake mixture.
Wow, that's committed.
Desperately wrapped my work clothes in my dressing gown to avoid turning up in covered in flour and eggs and all sorts of things. But they were delicious, so it was worth it. We don't need an excuse for pancakes really in our household, but today was a good one. What else have I been juggling? I live in a very old house, which I actually think is quite a lovely reflection of life because it's a very beautiful old house. I think it's very beautiful. But this morning, the bath had been leaking into the lounge. It's just one of those houses where, like, on any given week, it's sort of bits of it start to crack, something leaks, something sort of you start feeling a draft or air coming from somewhere where it shouldn't be coming from. And so it needs a lot of love, it needs a lot of care and attention. And the juggle of the house is actually quite a good representation, I think, of the just broader juggle of life. It's also, as well as Pancake Day, it's World Book Week.
Yes, it is.
And day on Thursday. So to any parent,
I completely lost that
has shared this pain, like at midnight on Wednesday night in our house. Actually, I'm traveling with work, so I've dodged it this year. But like they will change on Wednesday night what they want to be on Thursday. And my partner will be running around the house trying to find green socks or a red hanky or some other random
Don't call
accessory to go with whatever outfit they decide to go on Thursday. And I always imagine we're going to do the very like sustainable thing of making it yourself or swapping with someone else that's done it. And then like the day before, you're desperately looking out for the Amazon delivery that's probably come from China, like imagining how you ended up in this place. But we have outfits. It's just how much they need to evolve between now and then.
How much has that fitted in or not fitted in with work? What's work been like?
Oh,
for you
work,
this week?
yeah. No, work.
Remember that?
No. Other than pancakes and plumbing, I have and well booked day work. So yesterday, actually, I really enjoyed. I was with one of our biggest shareholders, so we're a big FTSE 100 listed company, but we are in, I think, a really fortunate position of many of our biggest shareholders have been holders of our shares since the IPO back in 2014. And so they know the story, they know the business, they know the team very, very well. They're very bought into the long-term view that we take, to the strategy that we're trying to deliver. And so we spent the day with one of them in Manchester, and from time to time they like to come and spend a day, get to meet more of the team, understand how we're thinking about everything from product to sustainability to marketing to some of the things we'll talk about today. But it's always a fun day because you just get a real external perspective on. It's very easy to get in the day-to-day of what you're delivering and what feels really important for Autotrader, and then this is just a very different perspective on the business from someone who's obviously quite close to it, but one step removed.
Can see the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
That brings me neatly on to my first question for you specifically, I suppose, which is, what is a COO? I don't really know. What does it mean? What do you do?
I mean, if you ever find out, then let me know too, because I think it's one of those classic job titles that means many, many things to many different people. Sometimes the COO role can be a real change agent in an organisation. Sometimes actually it's very operational. It's about executing the day-to-day. Sometimes it's can be quite a partner role for either the CEO or other members of the exec team. Sometimes it's about succession planning. It's about all sorts of different things. And I think that's probably why I love the role, actually, because if I define the time I've spent at Autotrader as COO, and I break down like in any 3 months or 6 months period of time, I've probably been doing a combination of all of those things. So some periods of time it might be about, actually there's a really big thing we're trying to deliver and I need to be in the middle of it. Like during the pandemic was probably a prime example where actually there were just lots of things that needed bringing together, and I was in a position where I could do that. Other times it might be, actually there's an area of the business that we really want to lean into, we want to do something different in. So I might work more closely with some of the other members of the leadership team in that area. Sometimes it will be there's something big we want to change, and I'll carve out time and make sure that I'm leading or driving that change. So it really is one of those roles that can be kind of whatever you want it to be. Now I hope I don't just make it up on any given day what I feel like doing that day. There is a bit more structure and purpose around it, but as long as like Nathan, the board, like the rest of the leadership team are clear on what I'm doing,
Nathan
where
being
I'm spending,
CEO.
Nathan CEO, yes, where I'm spending my time, then actually I feel like I have quite a lot of freedom to go where I need to be or where I feel like I can have an impact.
Nice. I like it. I want to be a COO. Julia, explain to me, you're marketing director at TrustFord. I've been in the industry for 25 years and I am embarrassed to ask, what is the relationship between TrustFord and Ford? I've never really understood, and maybe you can start with that.
Yeah, it's quite an unusual one because we're wholly owned by Ford, but because of the franchise setup, we have our own board and leadership team, and we have our own strategies. So we have to be arm's length, which is quite interesting because quite often you meet other people from other franchise groups and they think we get lots of preferential treatment, and actually, of course, the expectation is that we really drive the standard. So in some regards, we're stretched harder. But having said that, of course, there's opportunities to lean into different experiences and to tap into, perhaps if Ford are thinking of doing something, then I think we're at that stage in the partnership where they may ask for feedback. We certainly have very structured time with relevant senior leads in their team on a quarterly basis, from my perspective. But it's very much arm's length. So,
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, actually, before I started working at Autotrader, my entire career in the automotive industry had been spent really OEM focused, and I didn't understand a great deal about retail and dealers and so on. But, you know, I have learnt over the past few years, if I've learnt anything about retail, is that the relationship between retailer and OEM can be fractious, it can be difficult, it can be collaborative, it can be all sorts of things at the same time. And so is it a positive that you are linked to the OEM in a way that other retail groups aren't? Does it create its own set of challenges?
Well, interestingly, when I came into it, I just always thought every brand was the brand. I didn't understand the franchise setup either, so it was a real learning curve.
And I suppose the
for
consumer
me.
possibly still doesn't when they come to you.
Yeah,
they
no,
just
I
come to
don't.
Ford,
I don't
right?
think they always do, and that's part of the challenge of being the marketing director of whatever of the franchise dealer groups that are doing that. It's the same for other brands. I think we've come a long way. My early memories were not so happy in terms of, you know, very kind of parent-child type relationships. And I think that's changed. I think there's a lot more mutual respect around, you know, these are the experts in building vehicles, and we're the experts in terms of retail and selling them on to the consumer. So in many ways, certainly I've seen the dynamic change dramatically over the years. And that's often just about personalities and how you work together and just, look, we're all trying to do the same thing at the end of the day. Let's do it together and in a kind of collaborative style.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And you're also, as we said, heavily involved in the Women's Network group. And I know that you join us when we do stuff with the retail, women in retail. Has that resulted in, do you have quite a good gender split in TrustFord? Do you have quite a good relationship with your female customers? Because the whole gender gap conversation is both internal within companies in automotive, and it applies to our relationship with female consumers, but one begets the other, right? There's a huge Venn diagram there.
Yeah, no, it's a real privilege to be, I'm executive sponsor for the Women's Network group. They very much are there to drive that forward, and as with all the network groups, board and leadership members are there to be their executive sponsor or co-sponsor. It's a really interesting role. So we're invited onto their forums. We give a little bit of guidance in terms of perhaps what's going on we might know about in kind of wider business, and really help them on what they want to create and how they're going to reach out to the group that they're representing. So this is part of our overall diversity and equality strategy. I think we took the inspiration actually in some respects, because I know you have them as well at Autotrader, and we started that just over a year ago, and it's been
I didn't realise it was that new.
It's pretty new, and it's been, we've literally just had in January the first kind of catch up and looking at our metrics across each group and inviting each of the groups to present back to the relevant board and leadership members, and it was incredible listening to all the stories and how far they've come within that sort of 12-month period. Are we there yet with female representation? No. Probably reflect some other groups. So support functions, not bad, about 44% mix, which usual thing, HR, finance, marketing, all of those areas. In fact, I've got slightly more women than men in my team. Frontline, we're about 26%, but we've got, I think it's about 80 female sales execs, and for about 30 sites.
That sounds quite high.
It's moving forward. And then obviously after sales as well, we've got a way to go. So it's really those frontline roles, and also being able to, and we are starting to see women being pulled through to more senior roles in those frontline roles. And we do have a way to go in terms of those general manager positions. We need to find a way, and I know it's discussed across the industry. I've been in those conversations with Julia Greenhough and the 30% Club. But having said that, the metrics we also look at are around retention, gender pay gap. So gender pay gap last year the median was at 3%, which was really good for the industry. Clearly, we don't want any gap. But I'm hearing we're just about to hear the results for last year. So, yeah, we're making some concerted efforts in that space.
There's so many different topics to cover. We've got an episode on retention and an episode on recruitment because they're each deserving of their own episodes. We could continue to break it down. Catherine, at Auto Trader, we're pretty good now at board level, aren't we? And senior management level, executive level, whatever we call it, for gender balance.
Yeah, I think we've made, as you said, Julia, it's been a very long journey, but we've been very purposeful on that journey. I don't think you're ever there. We're actually our PLC board, the group of people that come together to, I guess, keep check on the management team in some sense and make sure that we are representing the interests of all of our stakeholders, whether that's shareholders, customers, employees, the communities that we work in. That group of people is now majority women. I think it's about 65% odd women. Now, is that too many women? I don't know. The way I think about it, there's no number that you're ever solving for. You're solving for, well, have I got a group of people around this table that bring diverse experiences, diverse backgrounds, a different perspective that can really make sure that when we're having conversations as a leadership team, that we are really representing the customers, the partners, everyone that we serve as a business. And yeah, if you're trying to get that in a group of 8 to 10 people, then inevitably, like at different points in time, you're going to skew more towards lots of different characteristics, and that the right balance for any organisation at any point in time will change. At the moment, we've always hired for great talent and the best people for the job, and we've got more women than men. But in a few years' time, it might rebalance a bit the other way, or it might go even more towards a stronger representation of women. So I don't think we're ever... I'm not sure you ever get there, but no. You keep striving to hire the best people, to have diverse experiences, perspectives around your table, and represent the people that you serve. And if you're doing those things, then hopefully you're solving for the things that really matter for your organisation.
And can you touch briefly on, we've kind of restructured things at Auto Trader a bit recently, haven't we? In that we had an OLT and now we've got an ALT, and we've got we had tribes and we've got communities. Can you just explain very briefly kind of how the business is structured internally?
Sure. Yeah, it's a bit of a messy but perfectly formed. Is that the right way to describe it?
Like a family.
Yeah, so we have an Auto Trader leadership team. So if the board is there to make sure that as a leadership team, we're representing the best interests of shareholders, stakeholders, doing the right thing by our employees, customers, all of those big and important questions, then the Auto Trader leadership team, or the ALT, we love a 3-letter acronym.
In this industry.
They're there to, I see them as like the guardians, the custodians of Auto Trader. We've been around for nearly 50 years. We want to be around for another 50 years. How, as a group of people, are we coming together to make sure that we're delivering that? And we are here for a period of time, hopefully a long time, but, you know, inevitably at some point we'll move on, and we need to make sure that we're leaving the business in better shape than the one we have today. And we deliberately design that leadership team to be a big group of people. So we have 21 people on that leadership team representing lots of different parts of the organisation. The more people you have in the room, the more experiences, perspectives, the further down in the organisation actually you can often go to get, you know, a perspective on an area or a decision that you might make that, you know, if a smaller group of people, you might just not have that information or that context to make that decision. So it sounds quite big and unmanageable, but actually it works for us. It is very collective decision-making, very consensus-focused, but equally we love a good argument and we love to debate, discuss, and then ultimately all agree on a direction and go forward very much united around that decision. But we think we make better decisions because we have that bigger group and we have lots of different voices in the room to help us make them. And
it's interesting. I'm sure we'll come on to this in a minute, but you know, Auto Trader, when Auto Trader talks about its audience or its customer, you know, Auto Trader is a digital marketplace is dealing with new and used cars and leasing and all these different sorts of things. You've got retailers that are customers, you've got the general public that are audience and customers, you've got OEMs that are customers, and it's when we think about marketing, it's a huge melting pot of voices, audiences, platforms, tone of voice, but it's all got to come together under an Autotrader brand identity. It's fascinating, but we have to just pause before we get back into that because we're already halfway through. It's time for podcast pit stop. Yes, I know, I sense the excitement in the room. Quick fire round, simple yes or no, choose one or the other. Julia, are you ready?
No, I don't think I am.
Come on, Julia, you got this.
Tough, we're doing it anyway. Julia, podcast or radio?
And I'm not allowed both.
No, Julia, it's not the rules of the game.
Radio.
Plug-in hybrid or pure electric?
Pure electric.
Puma or Fiesta?
Puma.
Thriller or rom-com?
Thriller.
Instagram or TikTok?
Instagram.
Birmingham or Leeds?
I don't know, Leeds. Birmingham.
There we go. See, it wasn't that painful, was it? Catherine, are you ready?
Everyone from Leeds is now going to be very upset with you. Yes, I'm ready.
See, I didn't mention Manchester. Eat in or eat out?
Oh, eat in.
PCP or lease?
Lease.
Sons or daughters?
Oh my goodness, you can't have that. I've got loads of both. Surely both.
Wimp. Gym or spa?
Gym.
AA or IAC?
AA?
Mentor or sponsor?
Sponsor.
Good. There we go. We're back into it. We're back in the room. Julia, let's think about women here a little bit. Feels to me like retailers have borne the brunt of blame for sort of negative stroke sexist buying experience, you know, that it all falls apart when it gets the retail experience. There's a lot of mistrust out there amongst women when we poll them for retailers, slightly less for OEMs, or still quite a lot. How much of that do you think is fair now? Maybe it was fair in the past, things are changing. Where do you think the retail experience is with women now?
I think we are definitely making progress. I mean, I look back to when I joined, and I came from very different kind of retail backgrounds. I mean, when I started out in Virgin Retail, the only rule was don't have anything offensive on your T-shirt. And, you know, walk into a dealership, and they were all in horrible ties, and the women were in cravats, and the women were very much in specific roles. And I look now to what's happening, and I know uniform doesn't sound like a big thing, but it's such a big thing. You know, getting rid of
hear
ties
this time and again
is just, you know, it's just such an equalizer, and it wasn't easy getting there, but it's so important as a trigger, if you like, when you're coming into the dealership. I think men and women can feel daunted by dealerships. They're big places because they have to house vehicles. I think it's all about the colleagues, how we recruit them, and how we look after colleagues. So again, we've made huge progress in terms of base salary. Obviously, a lot of it's still commission based, but the behaviours that used to drive compared to what it does now, when you're giving a decent salary for colleagues to take away, that's definitely made a difference. You know, going back to my role in the sort of women's network, part of what I'm trying to do now is take some of what we're doing internally and really focus more on what else can we do externally to make sure that women feel comfortable about that whole buying purchase. So looking into what we've just passed 15,000 Trustpilot 5-star reviews. That's something to really celebrate. And every week we send out and thank colleagues that are achieving that. And I'm always delighted to see lots of women's names in that list. And it's really interesting, the feedback that really works is around, it wasn't a hard sell. I was made to feel comfortable. It was my first time buying a car. I was frightened. I was put at my ease. So lots of small touches that I think really do make a difference. And that can be male colleagues as well as female. But I think moving away from that kind of perception that existed out there. And the other thing when I was thinking about this over the last few days, when you go back to when we rebranded, so when I joined the business, there were 7 different brands that we were inheriting, and we had to pull it all together, into one brand name, worked with relevant consultants. We did a ton of research with colleagues and with customers. And the word that kept coming through was trust. And we really had to take a brave pill to call ourselves TrustFord in this industry, because things go wrong. You sell thousands of vehicles, things can go wrong, and it can be quite emotional. Lovely when you're buying and picking up a new or used vehicle. Not so great when you're having to hand over the keys and the car sounds, smells, looks the same as when you dropped it off, but you've parted with a big lump of money.
Yeah.
So, we took that brave pill. In the early days, was it thrown back at us? Yes. Do I see it now? No. So do you know that? And I think again, I was thinking about, why did customers say trust? But it was our own database we were talking to. So do you think, whether that was their experience with the various brands in place on the whole, because it just kept coming through as a key word. I think now, sort of 10 years on, and any brand build takes a long time. Of course, we'll sometimes slip up, but overall, I think it hopefully helps on that consumer journey as well.
And do you think the retail environment is a friendlier place for female employees now? Do you think it's a more enticing career path for women?
We've put a ton of work into this, and we started from the top. So we were very clear from the beginning, this isn't just going to be a tick box exercise. So it was very much with board leadership representation, and we made sure that in every single session that we took all of our management and leaders through, there was a member of the board or leadership in that room with them as we went through it, really speaking from the heart. And that was absolutely critical, because in order to win hearts and minds, and also we had to be very conscious. We were talking to a predominantly white male audience who were feeling slightly intimidated. What's happening? Where am I in the middle of this? So we had to take everybody on that journey, for want of a better phrase. And we are moving forward. We see that in the retention data. We see it in how colleagues talk to us. We're very clear about things like our TrustFord jobs website, making sure we've got representation from all different backgrounds and cultures, talking about their experience to hopefully bring that to life for anybody that's considering a career. I'm quite passionate about speakers for schools. It's taken me a while to figure out how to explain marketing and automotive over the years. So I position it quite differently from the first few times I did it. Now, instead of saying we've got these rules, it's much more, does anyone here like social media?
Right.
In a room full of school kids.
That's like me with motoring journalism. I go in and I say to all the female grads, does anyone here read Vogue? You can write for Vogue as a car journalist, and suddenly everyone's interested.
Yeah, and it's the same. Do any of you like organising parties? Well, we've got rules for event, and it's trying to bring it to life in that way as well. Yeah.
I know a question I was burning to ask you, which is, you asked me a really good question a while ago about whether we had any data, Autotrader, about whether women preferred accompanied test drives or unaccompanied test drives, and I didn't. And I was like, let me know if you find out. What has your experience been?
So we have just done a little bit of a survey into this, so and quite interesting actually. Men and women, massive percentage, I suppose not surprisingly, want a lot of time spent before you take the vehicle away, explaining it, which is really relevant at the moment with all the technology that's going in. You'll see this day in, day out with all the different cars you test. Women were really clear. They wanted, their preference was 24 or 48-hour test drives, unaccompanied.
Right, take it away.
The majority of men said an hour is fine.
Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, really interesting.
So,
okay.
But when we said, would you prefer if you're in an accompanied test drive, a man or a woman?
Yeah.
I was expecting for the women, lots of women to say they prefer a woman, but it didn't come through that way.
Okay, they were agnostic.
They're agnostic, which I'm not sure, because obviously we went to our own database, we put a survey on our website, and we tried through social media, but the majority came through from our database. So the bit I don't know is whether, because they're happy with the TrustFord experience and have built those sort of relationships over the years, whether that affected.
Okay.
So I'd quite like to go again at some point and go to see what else it brought. But really pleased we did it, because that helps us in our positioning, because we do sometimes with our marketing do some A/B testing. if we're doing newsletters, then we can change what visuals we're using, the language.
Got to be data-led, right?
Yeah, but equally, it's quite interesting. I keep talking about simplifying language, like MHEV, FHEV, PHEV, all this. Get rid of it. It's plug-in hybrid or electric. But a lot of men are saying the same thing. Actually, make it simple for me. So actually, a lot of the time where I've been pushing really hard on what does this look like for a female consumer, I'm actually getting positive feedback from male friends outside of the industry. Well, that works for me too.
Yeah. Catherine, I think a lot of people would think Auto Trader, well, we're an agnostic marketplace. We sit back. We're not trying to push. We're trying to facilitate. And where does that leave us with thinking about tone of voice, thinking about our branding, our marketing, to all these different consumer pots that we talked about, and customer relations. But it's a really important part of what we do, isn't it? Especially if we want to grow a female audience, for example.
Well, you mentioned before that the foundations of our marketplace are millions of consumers on one side of it, and then a combination of retailers, manufacturers, leasing companies, anyone that wants to sell a car on the other side of it. And you're right, at the heart of that sits the independence and actually the trust. I think Ford and Autotrader always come out, like, whenever you ask consumers around who's trusted in automotive, it would be Ford is very highly trusted in Autotrader. And I think that trust comes from the fact that we are independent. We've got lots of sellers, but we don't mind who you buy from. And if you're a consumer, our job is to help close this huge information gap that exists between the people selling the car, who know everything about this car, who are experts in an industry that is quite complicated, and a consumer who does this job once every 3 to 5 years, who's coming to market, who has maybe their life's changed in the last few years. They've got a whole set of problems that they're trying to solve for. And it's our job in the middle of that to provide them with the information, with the tools, with the insight that they need in an impartial, in an unbiased way to make the best possible decision for them. So at the one level, it's you've just got to be independent. It sounds quite passive, but actually how you enable consumers, empower consumers to go on that journey, how you give them unbiased data on a car in a world, particularly around EVs and other topics, that is incredibly loaded with judgment and opinion. You've got to be quite proactive. It is a big shift from our very old magazine days, where it was, you put a picture, you put a description in a magazine that's printed once a week, to, well, actually, consumers are doing a lot, if not most, of the buying journey, certainly the research part of it, online. Absolutely. So you've got to enable them with everything they need to get confidence, trust in that car, in that retailer, in the value proposition to be able to go on that journey. So it is like how we talk to consumers, how we engage them is a huge part of the role that we think we need to play and the jobs that we need to do for people.
Yeah, and it's tricky finding that balance, isn't it? I found that tricky at Autotrader, between just being that for everyone, but not being, because you're so for everyone, you're actually for nobody, because you're not honing in on different audiences and different, it's a different sort of tone of voice and language potentially, isn't it? For families, first-time buyers, enthusiasts, the uncertain ones, men, women, old, young.
Yeah, I'd say the brand is for everyone. Like anyone that's interested in buying a car or a van or a bike or any kind of moving vehicle powered by electric or however means. But really what it's about, we've got people, like it is the whole industry is such an emotive category for people. Like we name our cars, we love our cars, they could become an extension of our family. Like the buying journey is quite an emotional one, and we're trying to match all these human beings with all these unique vehicles that might be the right one for them. And so how we do that at scale for 11 million odd unique people each month with 500,000 different units of stock, it's about, and I guess this is where the power of data and AI and data science comes in that we can see observed behaviours on our marketplace. We can see the interactions you've done, the cars you've looked at, the journeys you've gone on, and we can imply from your behaviour what you're most likely to want to see next. And that's some of the exciting things that actually, there's lots of debate about AI, good, bad, evil, whatever it is. Well, actually, in a closed environment, which Autotrader is, with our data, we can do that in a very personalised, tailored way. That doesn't mean we're sharing data anywhere. That doesn't mean we're doing anything disruptive with the AI. We're actually just helping people to find the things they need quicker and easier and tailor things better to them and their journey, which means we can use masses of data and masses of tech to actually provide what hopefully can feel like quite a personal experience for the individual.
Yeah, interesting.
That's really the joy of marketing in this new environment, is because all we ever want to do is be relevant to the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. There's lots of talk and debate, quite rightly, about AI, but the way it helps our industry, certainly, we don't want to be bombarding people when it's irrelevant to them. We want to be finding the right people in the right space. Yeah.
We are pretty much out of time already. Last question for both of you. Julia, for you, hints, tips for women, parents of girls listening out there who are interested in a career in automotive retail?
Do you know what? When I was approached about coming into automotive, my whole background, 25 odd years retail, I pushed back. I was like, no, my whole perception, which is really useful to fall back on, was, it's all about, you have to know everything about vehicles, you have to know this, you have to know that. And thankfully I was persuaded by, at the time, to have a more open lens. You come from retail, we're retailers, we sell stuff, but also obviously the marketing background was important. And I think that's the key, have an open mind. I look around this industry within TrustFord, Ford and beyond, and see amazing women in amazing roles who've carved incredible careers, really successful careers. It can really change your life as well in lots of ways, financially. And I see that in lots of levels within TrustFord. And I just want more women to have that opportunity. So if your little girl comes home and has heard about somebody talking in the school about automotive, don't just think no, because you've got something in the back of your head that doesn't fit. Have an open mind, because they can actually carve amazing careers.
Yes, I hear you and I second that. And Catherine, who are we looking for to come and join us at Autotrader? And I don't mean what particular skill sets, but what sorts of people do we want here? Who do we want on board?
Oh, anyone. I mean, Autotrader, genuinely, I think it, and careers in, we're somewhere between automotive and tech, which I think brings in even another layer to that conversation. I think for automotive, it's for most people the second biggest retail category that they spend money in. And it is, as we talked about, a very emotional, connected retailing journey. That's just fascinating. It's really about how people travel and how people move, isn't it? I mean, it can be about the car, but it's not really. There's a huge amount wrapped up in that car buying journey. And then in tech, it's about how do you talk tech in a way that you bring the full breadth of tech to that conversation, because really we say tech, but actually tech is about design, which is a very creative skill set. It's about products, which actually can be quite a commercial or an experience-driven skill set. Of course, there's engineering and data science, which are fundamental foundations of it, but actually a career in tech can mean many, many different things to many, many different people. So we try and spark people's curiosity in the different facets of automotive, which is broad and kind of industry and country changing, I think, because you can change how people think about how they travel. And then tech, because actually, again, tech suffers from a bit the same as automotive. You say tech and you immediately think deep engineering, whereas actually a career in tech can be hugely varied, exciting, creative, all sorts of things.
Also, we're not a company of petrol heads, are we? It always really surprises people when I say to people, most people at Autotrader might not even care about cars. It's not, we don't have to be really into cars.
No, I think it's a category that because most people in the UK, once they've passed the driving test and most people get beyond 17, it's an experience that we all have. Therefore, it is an industry that's genuinely for everyone, because most people in some way have that experience, can relate to that experience. And that's what it's really about, not the metal and the engine and the
batteries.
Power. Exactly.
There you go. It's an industry for everyone. That's a great point to finish on. Thank you both very much for joining us today. Thank you to everyone listening, following. Please subscribe and keep watching for more episodes.
Thank you.